Tron, what are you looking for?
The next Tron.
2010, Disney finally uploaded that long-awaited Tron sequel, and it was pretty awesome.
It's time!
It looked incredible and sounded even better. But it didn't quite deliver at the box office the way that the studio had hoped. And yet, just 2 years later, an animated TV series set in the Tron universe came out that was just as, if not more ambitious than the two movies it was attempting to bridge.
To put it mildly.
A series that had a bigger cast, a better story, and equally amazing visuals and sound. So with all the Tron Uprising had going for it, why exactly did Disney cancel it after a single 19-episode season? And what exactly is it that makes this arguably the best entry in the entire Tron franchise? Well, today we find out as we explore the story behind one of Disney's most criminally ignored animated series, TRON Uprising.
I'm ready.
No, you're not. But you will be.
So, the TRON franchise. It's kind of the little engine that could when it comes to Disney. The first one came out in 1982, was ahead of its time in visual effects, but it didn't financially perform up to the studio's expectation. Then we had TRON 2.0 in 2003, which I covered pretty extensively in a previous video. That too was ahead of its time visually and in the interactive storytelling department. But it also didn't financially perform in the way that Disney was hoping it would. Then there was TRON Legacy in 2010. Once again, we got a pretty fun escapist adventure with absolutely stunning visuals and audio that just didn't make the kind of money at the box office that Disney was hoping for. And much like the original Tron, in the years since its release, people have been revisiting Legacy and appreciating just how unique of a summer blockbuster it was and still is. But this same kind of wide rediscovery hasn't quite happened yet with TRON Uprising, Disney's 2012 animated series that was kind of sort of a bridge between the original Tron and Legacy. And if you're like me and, well, just about everyone else, you completely ignored Uprising during its original run, which is really unfortunate because it might just be the best Tron out there. But before we explore the dark, complex, and almost Batman-esque world of Uprising, we've got to take a step back and briefly re-examine Disney's insanely ambitious plan for launching an entirely new era of Tron that maybe, just maybe, was a bit too ambitious. It cannot be overstated just how wild of a decade the 2000s were at Disney. Long gone were the days of the business boom that was Disney's Renaissance era, leaving company CEO Michael Eisner in desperate need of finding a new direction. The thing was, big budget box office flops, bigger theme park financial issues due to the struggling Disneyland Paris, and some of the biggest acquisitions the media landscape had ever seen with ABC, ESPN, and Fox Family worldwide had all left Disney overextended and unable to invest in the big changes that were needed.
The board can't underestimate the impact of Michael Eisner being a lame duck CEO. These mistakes of the last 5 years alone have cost shareholders over $7 billion. What does it take? How many years of significant failures and how much capital must be squandered before a board acknowledges that new management is necessary?
And while there were some large-scale successes, like the launch of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, you had just as many big failures like the Alamo or Around the World in 80 Days.
Please! Anything but my statue of me!
And it was these failures and the general lack of creative direction that led to the sunsetting on the Michael Eisner empire and the dawn of the age of Bob.
Hello, I'm Bob Iger, CEO of the Walt Disney Company.
Iger's main mission was to rebuild the Disney brand through new storytelling and further acquisitions that centered around characters and franchises that could be used to market other areas of the company. I mean, purchasing a perpetual hit machine like Pixar was great and all, but owning the rights to characters like Woody and Buzz and Lightning McQueen and using them for toys and theme parks and waffle makers, That was where everything was going. And it meant that a singular movie in a franchise didn't have to wow critics or blow up the box office, as long as those specific characters and that specific brand could still be bankable throughout other areas of the company. But Disney needed to get the ball rolling, and we're already getting beaten out by other studios with pop culture juggernauts like Harry Potter and the Star Wars prequels. And while they did have more Pirates movies planned and were about to kick off the Chronicles of Narnia series, which would flame out after 2 films, neither of these had that built-in rabid fandom that could support a full-court multimedia blitz across just about every Disney division. Something that the folks at Lucasfilm Licensing had all but mastered with episodes 1, 2, and 3. What Disney did have, though, was a science fiction property that was well ahead of its time when it came out in 1982. A property that had initially underperformed at the box office, but slowly and surely had built up the kind of rabid fandom that had raced out to stores to purchase a new TRON 2.0 game and comic and toy line only a few years earlier. Disney had the grid, and a new big screen entry into a digital universe filled with disc combat, light cycle battles, and the dude was exactly the kind of opportunity they were looking for. Tron Legacy was greenlit in 2008, and the marketing blitz began almost immediately, starting with a surprise screening of a VFX test reel at Comic-Con 2008.
How would you guys like to see the new Tron trailer?
At this point, there was no cast or even a finished script, but there was a hyped fan base that Disney was more than happy to feed with a constant stream of teasers, previews, and announcements over the next 2 years. Things like a fully modeled Flynn's Arcade, complete with a secret tunnel that led to concept art, costumes, and even a fully modeled light cycle from the upcoming film. And when Tron Legacy did premiere in December of 2010, it was accompanied by one of the largest marketing and merchandise pushes in the company's history.
A world where all the laws have changed, and only the strongest programs survive.
And along with this marketing blitz came the announcement that the Tron universe would be expanding even further with one of the most cinematic and ambitious animated TV series that Disney had ever made. From the primary writers of Tron Legacy and directed by one of the creative minds behind Dexter's Laboratory, the Powerpuff Girls, and Samurai Jack, Tron Uprising was positioned as a prequel series to Legacy that would both reference and sometimes address characters and events from the movie. But even more surprising than the fact that we were actually finally getting what looked to be a state-of-the-art Tron series was the voice cast. I mean, hearing names like Elijah Wood, Mandy Moore, Lance Henriksen, Paul Rubens, and Bruce Boxleitner, and you would have been excused for thinking that this was the cast for a third Tron movie. Not an animated series on Disney XD, the company's second-tier cable channel. Sure, there was almost a year and a half between the announcement and premiere of Uprising, but between how incredible that looked and the almost assured box office success of Legacy, it was looking like we were headed towards a new golden age for the Tron franchise. But then Legacy actually came out, and while there were plenty of critics out there that appreciated the truly cinematic experience,
and despite my little problems here or there with what's going on, Sometimes this movie is more confusing than Inception. The special effects are great. Jeff Bridges is great.
The majority just didn't feel that the stunning visuals and soundtrack made up for the movie's underbaked story and themes.
You know what? The new Tron Legacy, is a whole lot like the old Tron, which means it's not all that good.
Tron? You are as lucky as pretty as you are.
And then there was the one question that I and many other Tron fans had when coming out of the theater.
Do you think that when they wrote Tron Legacy, they forgot to rewatch Tron? And they just forgot that Tron was the hero of Tron?
It's very weird.
When it came to tickets actually sold, Legacy easily took the #1 spot at the box office, but the just shy of $44 million opening was considered to be pretty soft. And unfortunately, that trend continued throughout its theatrical run, which ended up at around $400 million worldwide. Not too shabby for a run-of-the-mill summer blockbuster, but for Disney's next big franchise, along with a $170 million production budget and 2 straight years of a massive marketing campaign, this was not exactly what the studio was hoping for. And this was even worse news for Tron Uprising, which now not only had a lead-in that ended up being less culturally relevant than everyone had hoped and was being labeled a disappointment, but it also still wasn't even going to premiere for 12 months after Legacy had already ended its theatrical run. Was Disney going to continue to bang the Tron marketing drums to support Uprising? Or had Legacy's disappointing box office forced them to once again reevaluate Tron as a viable AAA franchise? We'd start to get the answer to this just 6 months later at San Diego Comic-Con 2011, where Disney not only showed the brand new trailer for Uprising, which had also been included on the Blu-rays and DVDs for Legacy, but they also showed a handful of 3D models and concept art. And from there, not much else. At least not until we got closer to that summer 2012 premiere, where we got the expected Comic-Con panel, a new trailer, and various cast and crew interviews. And while it was difficult not to be excited with how great everything was looking and sounding, it was also impossible to fully shake Legacy's aftermath.
I'm curious, are you guys concerned that the series, while popular with people who know Tron, would be a little bit difficult for someone who's just never heard of Tron?
Well, I mean, it's obviously something that's in our minds, and we've tried to design the show in a way that it's totally welcome for anyone to drop in who's never heard of Tron, and that they can get immersed in this world, experience it, enjoy it, and hopefully love it and discover there's a lot more to it.
I mean, I think that the general premise is very simple. You are in your hometown and someone has come to take it over and you don't care for it. And I think everyone can relate to that. And then hopefully that will be their gateway into knowing, like, wait, what's the original movie? And, oh, who's Yori? And what's going on? And what's going on in Legacy? And where's Sam?
And I mean, that's a fair question. If Disney didn't feel that enough people saw Tron Legacy, how exactly is Uprising going to appeal to that wider audience? For that, we'd have to wait until the series premiere. Maybe, just maybe, the long-form narrative format that TV provides is exactly what this franchise needed.
I think you may be just what I'm looking for.
What are you looking for?
The next Tron.
Tron Uprising premieres this June only on Disney XD.
Episode 1 of Tron Uprising debuted on May 18th, 2012 with Beck's Beginning, a 30-minute prelude to the series that was initially going to be broken up into 10 micro parts before somebody, somewhere, had the good sense to just stick to a single long premiere episode. In this, we're reintroduced to a whole new area of the same old grid, along with a mix of new and old characters that all tie everything back to Legacy. And this is important, because remember, this series is intended to take place and tie into many of the events we see throughout that movie. And anyone that's seen Legacy knows that it quickly glosses over the period of time that Kevin Flynn rebuilds his own vision of the perfect system, with the help of both Tron and a virtual copy of himself he creates named Clue. Clue eventually turns on Flynn.
Flynn! Am I still to create the perfect system? Yeah.
Who goes into hiding, all while Tron is converted into an evil program named Rinsler. And so, with the good guys out of the way, Clue is left to colonize this new grid and reform it into his own perfect vision. This is the state of the grid that we enter into with Tron Uprising, as we're introduced to a talented mechanical program named Beck and his friends, right as their home city is being taken over by Clue. And this shift in perspective ends up being one of the best parts of the series. In both Tron and Tron Legacy, we're following Kevin or Sam Flynn, and so our perspective on the grid is that of an outsider's, where everything looks strange and fantastical, but we eventually learn more about the world and how it functions as the movie progresses. The challenge with this perspective, though, is that it sometimes comes at the expense of world building. The focus is on introducing all of these various pieces, rather than establishing how they all fit together. And so with all this heavy lifting around the various rules of the world already in place, TRON Uprising can focus its story entirely on the individual programs within the grid, and making sure that some of these underbaked pieces of Legacy are fleshed out even further. Right at the beginning, Uprising establishes a very different tone with our main character Beck. Rather than being a user or something inherently special, he's a simple mechanic program who enjoys the safety and security of working with his friends in a garage. That's all literally shattered once Clue's occupation of Argon City begins, led by the brutal General Tesla.
Welcome home.
Rather than submit, Beck defies his programming and revolts under the guise of the still missing in action Tron. His belief is that he can spark a revolution if the citizens of Argon City see that Tron is alive and that he's actually fighting against Clue's occupation. Better yet, we soon learn that the real Tron actually still is alive, but seriously injured, and he's willing to train Beck to become the next Tron, all to help bring the fight to Clue. But because Argon City is still under occupation, Beck has to keep his alter ego a secret from everyone in his life to help keep both them and himself safe. It's all a pretty simple setup that on the surface feels very Batman Beyond, but with style and action set pieces straight out of Tron Legacy. Though even at 19 episodes at 22 minutes each, Uprising is able to explore complex themes such as fascism, individual responsibility, revolution, and the toll this all takes on the surrounding community. When Tron damages some key piece of Clue's plan and General Tesla punishes the citizens of Argon City,
this renegade has made our city unsafe. And who has to pay for his relentless campaign of terror? You, the hard-working citizens of Argon.
It makes total sense that the programs start to turn on each other and ask themselves if Tron's fight is really worth it. Is he just a renegade, and would everyone's life be better if he just gave up the fight? It's just a much more complex and layered grid than we've seen in any other Tron.
Citizens of Argon, the nightmare is over. The plot to sap your energy has been foiled. And we know the culprit who wears this profanity. The mark of the traitor, the mark of Tron. But fear not, Tron is dead. And I assure you this imposter, this renegade will be brought to justice. Never forget, we are here for you.
Argon City is this living, breathing metropolis. An environment that feels like programs actually live there. It's got businesses, transportation, a social scene, bad parts of town.
Before the war, this was a boom town. Now it's a garbage heap.
Clue and General Tesla's army is made up of programs that aren't all equally bought into the cause, and aren't above turning on each other or even showing the occasional bit of mercy. And the series isn't afraid to show even the more mundane consequences that Clue's occupation and Tron's revolution is having on everyday programs. Sometimes that's a background shot of a soldier cleaning up the Uprising's graffiti off the walls, or maybe it's a brief moment of seeing just how exhausted and beat down the citizens are by General Tesla and his army.
Attention programs. There has been a security breach. Prepare your disks for scanning.
There's even multiple episodes dealing with the ISOs that we first saw in Tron Legacy. There, they were introduced as naturally spontaneous life forms that were all hunted down and almost entirely eradicated by Clue.
The ISOs, they were gonna be my gift to the world.
So what happened?
Clue happened. Clue saw the ISOs as an imperfection, so he destroyed them.
The Purge.
He killed them all?
That was genocide.
And that's pretty much it. In Uprising, we get a little bit more with a quick flashback to Cora, who's still on the run and concealing her ISO identity.
Times are hard ever since the war.
Are you soldiers?
Refugees. Our home city became a target of the Purge when some ISOs were discovered there. We barely made it out alive.
It must have been terrifying having ISOs in your own city.
I've heard they're insane. That they can even de-res programs with their bare hands.
I'm pretty sure that's just a rumor.
And we eventually get to witness the events that actually kick off the full ISO extermination.
Freaks! Go back to the scene you crawled out of!
This is our home too.
Flynn intended the grid for all programs to be shared freely. Don't dishonor his vision through violence.
ISO! It was them!
No!
And how all of this affects the balance of power between Clue, Tron, and Flynn.
I understand your need for justice. But ISOs have just as much a right to be here as anyone. The grid created them, not me.
I trusted you. He betrayed us.
You're wrong. Flynn betrayed us. Betrayed all of us. Now, Clue is free to cleanse the grid of the ISOs.
Oh yeah, clearly themes like extermination, fascism, military occupation, revolution, and lots of death, or in this case de-resing. It's all pretty serious stuff, especially for an animated TV show with a Y7 rating on Disney XD. But these are all concepts that the team behind TRON Uprising fully embraced, and it's made all the better for it. And all of that may be part of the reason why a show that looked this good, sounded this good, had such a great cast, and such deep character and story development didn't even make it to a full season. Because as much as you'd expect a flashy big budget TV show that's directly attached to a big budget movie to at least do okay in the ratings, TRON Uprising didn't even do that. After its May 18th premiere on the Disney Channel, the audience just didn't follow Uprising back over to its permanent home on Disney XD, where the next 6 episodes only got between 350 and 580,000 viewers. At that point, the writing was on the wall, with Uprising taking a 3-month break before returning with 3 episodes aired on a completely different night, all before another month-long break, and the series finally returning with the final 9 episodes airing in Disney XD's graveyard slot of Sunday at midnight. And just as much as the poor ratings, TRON Uprising was also the victim of bad timing. Around the time that Disney XD was still shuffling Uprising's time slot, the Walt Disney Company was about to drop its own major bombshell.
Today, I am proud to announce the Walt Disney Company is acquiring Lucasfilm, the global entertainment company founded by George Lucas and the home of the legendary Star Wars franchise.
And we all remember how George reflected on that one.
Sell them off. I sold them to the white slavers that take these things and
At this point, Disney completely gave up on struggling to sell the grid and instead invested all resources into their own version of a galaxy far, far away, which we got a glimpse of less than 10 months after TRON Uprising's last episode aired.
To battle the Empire, a rebel alliance will form. The Jedi will rise, and you will know the power of the Force. Star Wars Rebels, coming in 2014 to Disney XD.
From there, Uprising would briefly pop up on Apple and Amazon's digital storefronts, along with Netflix as part of a larger licensing deal with Disney. But even this would be short-lived, disappearing from the streamer just 1 year later. And while the series and art director Alberto Mielgo would win a Primetime Emmy Award for achievement in animation, Disney wouldn't make TRON Uprising available again until the launch of Disney Plus in November of 2019. The only real positive in all of this is that, much like both Tron and Tron Legacy, Uprising's wide availability on Disney Plus has now given it a chance to be discovered and slowly build up that same cult fandom that we always see with this franchise. And as new fans arrive, former members of the creative team continue to share glimpses at what could have been the future adventures of Beck and his revolution. We got a peek at a never-completed Season 1 finale, thanks to leaked storyboards from storyboard artist Calvin Lee.
There's a terrorist loose in Argonne, a renegade, and I bear the blame.
Don't beat yourself up, Tesla.
More recently, writer Bill Wolkoff tweeted out script pages from a never-produced TV movie that would have bridged Uprising's first and second season. The first snippet has Korra returning to join the Uprising and confronting Beck about him fighting as Tron. And then there's a scene with a cameo from Daft Punk, which Wolkoff admits that, even though they were given the green light to write it in, there was heavy skepticism that the duo would ever have agreed to appear. And that's where we are with the legacy of Tron Uprising. Is it still worth checking out all these years later? Absolutely yes, even if you're just a casual fan of the franchise. Just know going in that it all ends on a cliffhanger with a whole lot of loose ends. But hey, now that that third Tron movie is officially a go, maybe, just maybe, we'll be given an opportunity to check in with the programs of Argon City, even if it's just a cameo. Oh no! Have you read this story synopsis? Tron Ares follows a highly sophisticated program, Ares, who is sent from the digital world into the real world on a dangerous mission, marking humankind's first encounter with AI beings. What could possibly go wrong? And if you can't wait to revisit the grid with Tron 3, you'd better check out Disney's first attempt at a Tron sequel almost 10 years before Legacy. And surprisingly, it's still pretty great.